This is In the Loop. I'm Christian Bryant. Studies show that ITL is 100% effective at getting you caught up on the news and featuring some of the best in-depth reporting from around the world. That said, the percentage of my jokes landing during the show is just a little lower. Here's what we got for y'all. Tonight, reparations aren't just a hypothetical in a handful of towns and cities across the US. We'll look at efforts to aid Black households feeling a financial pinch through generations of housing discrimination. Plus, who says a sitcom can't deal with some heavy stuff? We take a look at how one show handled real issues and still got the laughs. But first, here's what you need to know right now. The suspected gunman in the Boulder, Colorado shooting that left 10 people dead made his first court appearance today. He's charged with 10 counts of murder and could face more charges. His appearance comes as lawmakers debate how best to respond to gun violence broadly, which kills about 40,000 people in the US each year. President Biden has even floated the idea of executive actions, though he hasn't gotten specific yet. I want to point something out right quick. During his speech on the Senate floor, Senator Michael Bennet from Colorado said this about gun violence.
And we can't allow this to become normal. And it's not just the mass shootings, it's the daily shooting.
See, those daily shootings kind of get lost in the fray every time there's a highly covered mass shooting. Debate like this doesn't happen when certain communities experience violence on a daily basis. Full stop. There was a short reprieve in the frequency of mass shootings during 2020, according to one definition that identifies a mass shooting as 4 or more people dead. But many communities, especially Black and brown communities, saw an increase in gun-related crimes and high casualty shootings where 4 or more people are shot. It might seem like mass shootings are cropping up after a quieter 2020, but don't get it twisted. 2020 was still the deadliest year in decades. During his first solo press conference, President Biden set a new goal for U.S. vaccinations.
We will, by my 100th day in office, have administered 200 million shots in people's arms. That's right, 200 million shots in 100 days. I know it's ambitious, twice our original goal, but no other country in the world has even come close, not even close.
This announcement comes as AstraZeneca attempts to work their vaccine into the US lineup. As promised earlier this week, AstraZeneca has released new data showing its coronavirus vaccine is 76% effective at protecting against COVID-19, not 79% as they previously reported. If you're just getting caught up on the back and forth, let me tell you why this news is giving us a bit of whiplash here. Earlier this week, AstraZeneca reported their vaccine had 79% effectiveness. The next day, the National Institutes of Health released a statement that said, nah, that info is outdated, urging the company to review its data, which brought us to this latest release. The new numbers aren't much different from what the company initially released, but the uncertainty could impact confidence in vaccines. Europe's drug regulator released a statement last week touting the safety of the vaccine, despite reports of blood clotting and abnormal bleeding in a few patients. The vaccine isn't available in the US yet, but the company is still expected to apply for emergency use authorization with the FDA, despite this past week. I gotta be honest, yesterday I had no idea how long this whole ordeal was going to last, but as of late Thursday, a cargo ship roughly the size of a skyscraper is still wedged sideways in Egypt's Suez Canal. The ship ran aground Tuesday and officials had blamed gust of winds and low visibility for the accident. Since then, tugboats and earth movers have been trying to get the ship free. It's kind of made for some fascinating images showing the scale of that thing. Some of the ship's cargo might have to be stripped off to get the hull light enough to dig out, and that could take days. But the trouble is far larger than a single ship, and it's growing by the hour. More than 10% of global trade moves through the Suez Canal, and most of that is now backing up into both the Red Sea and the Mediterranean while vessels wait for clear passage, possibly the most expensive traffic jam in the history of capitalism. The pandemic was already putting major pressure on shipping too, from supply chains to shortages of shipping containers themselves. Industry experts say a new bottleneck in Suez is going to have knock-on effects pretty much everywhere.
So the longer this lasts, the higher the risk that we're going to see massive congestion problems in the European ports, say a week to 2 weeks from now.
A Chicago suburb made news this week after its city council members approved reparations for Black residents in the city. And similar reparations efforts like that one are happening across the country. Newsy's Jamal Andrews takes a closer look at a nationwide movement where communities attempt to make amends with their Black residents.
Evanston, Illinois is now the first and only city in the country to make reparations available to its Black residents for past discrimination.
On a 8-1 vote, the Evanston City Council approved.
But it may not have that distinction for long. Local governments across the U.S. have made more progress toward reparations over the past year than activists have seen in decades.
I'm in the mainstream. I'm no longer on the fringe shouting and screaming about the right for and the need for reparatory justice.
Reparatory justice, or reparations, is defined as making amends for a wrong one has done. In the past, reparations have taken many forms. For 80,000 Japanese Americans, it was $1.6 billion worth of cash payments for being imprisoned during World War II.
The harm was so very multifaceted. Thus, the remedy can and should and must be multifaceted as well.
Evanston's plan focused on housing, allocating $400,000 for eligible Black households to spend on things like home repairs and down payments. Evanston's Black residents will need to prove their relation to people who lived in Evanston from 1919 to 1969, when housing discrimination ran rampant. The majority of the money will be pulled from tax revenue from the sale of recreational marijuana, an approach Evanston's southern neighbor is considering too.
I couldn't think of a better cause for the millions, soon to be billions, okay, that is going to be exchanged in Illinois in the cannabis space.
Alderman Stephanie Coleman is in charge of Chicago's subcommittee on reparations. The committee is charged with examining the state of equity in Chicago.
Should be a priority because we built this city. The Black man who founded this city. We should do it for our forefathers and mothers, and for the generations after us.
While Chicago was one of the first major cities to take action on reparations, smaller cities like Providence, Rhode Island, and Asheville, North Carolina, are farther along. Providence's mayor, Jorge Alorza, signed an executive order over the summer focused on bringing reparations to New England. The executive order has 3 phases, the first of which is a nearly 600-page report outlining injustices against the Black community in Providence.
There's so many injustices that happen here locally that we just don't know about. And the consequences of it are still alive today and they can be felt. And that's what we want to come through from this report.
Surveys show most Americans are against reparations. A Reuters Ipsos poll last year showed just 1 in 5 thought using tax money in this way was the right thing to do. But Alorza believes efforts like his in Rhode Island and in Evanston are the proof of concept needed to eventually get a national model.
You start at the local level, but the idea is to build up enough momentum so it can be taken up by other institutions in society, by other levels of government, be it county or state, and eventually becomes something that's taken up at the national, at the federal level. It's like they say that there's nothing more powerful as an idea whose time has come. This idea's time has come.
Jamal Andrews, Newsy, Chicago.
When you're back, we're going to get a Flintstone foot start to run through trending topics in tech and gaming. How much is too much to pay for a movie? Marvel fans with Disney Plus subscriptions are about to find out. We're stepping into the world of expensive movies and gaming with one of our favorite segments, Next Level Speedrun, starting with this. After a long COVID-induced delay, Marvel movies are back, and you don't even have to go to a theater to catch the newest one.
My plan was to drive us away. Well, your plan sucks.
Disney has announced Black Widow, the latest entry in the Marvel Cinematic Universe, will come out on July 19th on Disney Plus and in theaters. You'll have to pay a $30 premium on top of your Disney Plus subscription to watch it at home, though. Disney has embraced the premium streaming plan recently. Animated action film Raya and the Last Dragon also debuted as a $30 Disney Plus stream, and so will the new Cruella movie when it drops on Friday. Fun fact, 2020 was the first year in a decade without a new Marvel film, and Black Widow comes out just over 2 years after the last Marvel movie released in theaters. So even though it feels like it's been a decade since the last Spider-Man film hit, it hasn't been. We promise. Microsoft is reportedly thinking about buying the video game chat app Discord to the tune of a cool $10 billion. In case you don't know why Discord is such a big deal, it's a messaging app focused on gaming which allows users to form private servers where they can text, voice, and video chat with each other. The company has over 100 million monthly users and brought in about $130 million in revenue last year. Buying Discord could give Microsoft an edge with community tools for its own Xbox platform and Game Pass subscription service. And Microsoft's clearly in the mood to splurge. The company just wrapped up its $7.5 billion purchase of game studio powerhouse Bethesda Softworks. But we shouldn't get ahead of ourselves. It's still unclear if talks will go anywhere, and Discord's also been flirting with the idea of going public on the stock market instead. GameStop's wild ride continues. Over half of the company's board of directors are stepping down following a lackluster earnings call. The video game retailer announced in an SEC filing that 8 of its board members are planning to retire at the next big shareholders meeting. The reshuffle could give the company new leeway to shake up its business model. That would be welcome news for the horde of Redditors that have been pushing GameStop's stock to astronomical heights over the last few months. The notion that GameStop is on the verge of a big turnaround has been one factor driving the surging stock price. GameStop's stock jumped almost 20% at the start of trading today. It's not quite diamond hands territory, but there might still be life in the stock rally yet. On the surface, NBC's Superstore is a comedy about folks who work at a megastore. It dramatizes the kind of stuff that might happen in any other workplace before and during the pandemic. But in its time on air, the show has covered a range of politically charged topics to essentially inform its audience about those issues. Newsy's Casey Mendoza caught up with the cast of Superstore to reflect on the show's lasting legacy ahead of the final season.
What?
Wow.
More cases are popping up in Oregon, Washington, New York.
You guys, Tom Hanks has it.
After 6 years, NBC's Superstore is taking its final bow and turning the lights off at Cloud 9.
We came in, we did Obama, Trump, Biden, right?
Yeah.
We've sort of, what a time in America, in American politics, and for the working class, for culture, for sort of everything.
Well, I read Zephyr does blood diamonds.
What do you mean by does?
I don't know. I didn't click on it.
Alongside comedic hijinks, background gags, and running jokes, the sitcom about retail workers in a St. Louis big box store tackled the issues facing everyday people: elections, labor issues, race, even the pandemic.
There's a highly contractable virus out there that our country does not have a hold of.
Our first priority was to reflect the real world and what's going on right now.
The show is such a time capsule for this period of time. We really, throughout the seasons, we're always kind of commenting on what was current both in America and around the world, not only in just themes, but also in specifics.
Do undocumented people have documents?
No.
Last year, the show's portrayal of immigration issues caught the attention of researchers at the Define American Advocacy Group and the Norman Lear Center. Their study found that viewers who felt a sense of friendship with the character of Mateo Liwanag, a gay Filipino undocumented immigrant, were more likely to be vocal about immigration issues.
I get messages all the time on social media about how the story has touched and affected them because either they have family members who are undocumented or they themselves are documented. Just want to go home. I never really realized how much of a mirror it really held up to what was going on until I started hearing from everybody. And it's been incredible to hear the stories.
That's the legacy Superstore leaves behind. It was a workplace comedy that humanized the realities low-wage workers face. It poked fun at the chaos of the past 6 years, and befitting of its run, it ends with the backdrop of the pandemic.
Everything was presented with compassion and reality and sympathy and empathy, and I think that's something we're really proud of.
I think that's a great legacy to be able to leave behind.
Casey Mendoza, Newsy, Chicago.
See, now I'm thinking about this show's lasting legacy. If this was our final season, I would hope you learned something from us. If not, take it up with my boss. Engineers and planners want to make the cities of tomorrow more sustainable, and one U.S. city is trying some new things to get a head start. Our own Joey Mayako partnered with sister station WCPO in Cincinnati for an inside look. Here's a clip from that new short doc, Modern Metropolis.
By the year 2030, over 700 cities will have populations of 1 million people or more, including 43 megacities. Growth projections show that the number of buildings will double over the next 4 decades. The resource demands from this urban growth require a fundamental shift in how we'll need to prepare our cities for the future. One organization, known as the 2030 Districts, uses an innovative model designed to keep up with this pace.
Can you imagine building the entire world out in 4 decades and then adding it to what we have now? So the scale and the time frame for all this innovation now has become shorter and shorter.
Starting in 2009 with the 2030 Challenge for Planning as the framework, Ed Masria and his organization, Architecture 2030, helped launch what would eventually become the 2030 Districts. Their vision? To establish a global network of high-performance building districts in cities aimed at mitigating and adapting to climate change.
The districts really serve as a model, but it incorporates a whole community.
To do this, building owners, businesses, and local governments come together to make voluntary commitments to a 50% reduction in their energy, water, and transportation-related emissions by the year 2030.
To tackle an issue, we look at how we can create a solution that's understandable and that can be implemented fairly quickly and then can scale. That model seems to hold as a way to move forward in cities.
Starting in Seattle, then spreading to Cleveland, the 2030 Districts network is now in 22 cities and consists of over 1,000 organizations and 1,800 buildings. Nearly 470 million square feet of commercial real estate has been committed to the effort. Long before a district is officially formed, a city must pass through 3 key phases. This rigorous process helps define what the district will eventually become. Knowing where to start can be difficult, though, so when a small group from Cincinnati wanted to start their own district, they looked to their neighbors in the north for help.
And this is Cindy C. Segoy. I'm the executive director of the Cleveland 2030 District.
Long known as the mistake on the lake for the burning of its river back in 1969, Cleveland has now become a leader in the 2030 District movement.
We were that early adopter that really, I think, got the ball rolling on developing this movement across the country. When you can go to a building owner and show them exactly how their building has been performing over time and the steps that they need to take to start reducing their consumption, improve their operational efficiency, save money, I think that's what's so great about the 2030 districts, because it's really a holistic approach.
To get started, working groups from across the public and private sector build a coalition of support.
We are about to submit our formal request to the National 2030 District Organization for Cincinnati to become a prospective 2030 district. On our group, we have representatives from local businesses, from major industries located in downtown, a number of people from the design and architecture community, folks from the city and from the community. And I think what's unique to us is that we also have people from the media here helping to document the process that we're going through. Final piece of the submission that we'll be making today is a preliminary boundary or map of the potential 2030 district. This map is deceptively simple. It's actually the result of many conversations that this group had over time. Where we landed is to start out with Cincinnati's Central Business District as the core of the Cincinnati 2030 district, and potentially over time expand that to include areas like over the Rhine, perhaps uptown, which is home to major institutions, universities, hospitals, the Cincinnati Zoo, and potentially also into northern Kentucky. We want to focus on the institutions that are big, but also maybe not the ones that are already incredibly active in this space, in order to give them an incentive to kind of give them a helping hand and really bring them into the fold. We're going to email Mr. Dave Lowe, who is the 2030 district representative nationally. I think typing an email is probably not the most exciting thing in the world, but it's a good milestone for us. All right, here we go. We're sending it off. Message has been sent.
If you had one word of advice for an oncoming city, what would that be?
Just do it.
You can check out the full doc wherever you stream Newsy. See you in a bit. President Joe Biden has given his VP a new directive within the administration. lead the effort to stem the flow of migrants to the U.S. southern border by working with Central American governments. Even with a border that's officially closed, people, including unaccompanied minors, are crossing in huge numbers. Newsy's been on the southern border this week, and James Packard took a closer look at how relief centers in border towns are in high demand.
On an unremarkable corner in downtown McAllen,
we are doing our best,
stands a remarkable woman.
They actually call me or text me and say we're releasing a bus of 50, 20.
For hours, Sister Norma Pimentel ushers weary migrants, bags on shoulders, children on hips, behind the doors of this respite center.
En el grupo habíamos como 40 personas más o menos.
A refuge after a long journey.
Y nos iba a agarrar migración mexicana, pero corrimos. Gracias a Dios el río no estaba tan alto, se podía caminar.
And all the while, she is fielding interview after interview from the onslaught of reporters here to capture their stories.
My concern is making sure they get the proper help and guidance and safety to make sure nobody takes advantage of them. They don't end up outside of a bus station without knowing what to do.
We're right outside the bus station in downtown McAllen. Once people are in this area, they're getting COVID tested down the street, coming down here to the respite center, and there are hundreds of people inside charging phones to communicate with loved ones, picking up hygiene supplies, a lot of young kids and young mothers just having a safe place to wait for the next bus. Many migrants coming from CBP custody, beginning a new life in a country still deciding whether they can stay. But some, like Andreina Rojas, are coming here after more than a year in Mexico, a result of the Biden administration opening processing for people waiting under the Trump-era Remain in Mexico policy.
Estoy pisando por primera vez los Estados Unidos.
Is that making it any harder for you?
Well, it's an added responsibility.
Fui amenazada y por eso decidí salir de mi país para más que todo darle una calidad de vida a mi niño y un futuro mejor, de verdad.
As crossings along the southern border keep up, many with young kids are able to stay, straining the government and keeping shelters like this one busy. Is there a point at which you can't take any more people?
Well, I hope we don't reach that point.
But with her kind of energy, Sister Pimentel could probably stay here forever. James Packard, Newsy, McAllen, Texas.
That's it for us, gang. As always, thanks for watching. We'll be back for more In the Loop next week, same time, same place. Newsy's short doc, Modern Metropolis, is headed your way right now.